Welcome back to the news GES video. Today I'll be taking a nostalgic retrospective look at each of the Transformers movies, since it is the last franchise that I have wanted to make a GES about that I have not by the end of this year. So I'm doing it now, and plus the Rise of the Beast trailer finally dropped, so that makes it perfect timing. Hi, my name is Tyler, and I love film. And let's just get straight into it with Transformers. This is a very solid film. Also, just to get this out of the way, Shia LaBeouf does work in this movie and elevates what otherwise would have been a dull lead character, and this film does have some comedy that works. It must be pointed out that the CGI on the Transformers is remarkable, especially for the time, and so perfectly done. So is the scale for the Transformers in this film, at least for the most part. And it is actually a well-structured blockbuster. The film connects us to its characters and connects its characters together well. It has a good beginning that hooks us from the get-go. Megatron's presence as the main villain in this film is felt greatly. So is Optimus Prime's presence. There are some dumb things here and there, and I do like how the lore of the franchise is handled simply in this film. And overall, this is a thoroughly enjoyable blockbuster, but not a perfect movie. Oh yeah, it's very rewatchable. I give this film an 8.6 out of 10. Transformers Revenge of the Fallen is a film that I don't think is that good. But I also don't think it is as bad as many people say, as is where most people cite their sources for why the Transformers franchise is bad. And yeah, I do think that this film has some of the worst aspects of this franchise and pretty much all of the bad aspects. But first, I want to talk about the script, because this film very obviously did not have a script, or had very little of one, since it was created during the 2007 to 2009 writer strike, and it shows. These films are very plot-driven and not very character-driven, and when you already have weak characters and you're focusing on a pointless plot, and then the plot is barely there and made up as you're going along, and the most generic and insincere out of the whole franchise, then that's a problem. I will say, though, I do have some nostalgia for this film and like some elements, because they were cool to me when I was a younger kid, and a lot of the stuff in this film is still cool to me now, and most parts of it can entertain me. I said most. Some parts of this film really make me think that it could have possibly been a better sequel than it was, and possibly better than the first movie, because if those plot elements were intertwined more competently, this film could have really been something special. An example of this was how cool of a plot element and how it would have elevated the movie and the stakes if Optimus Prime died in a better version of this movie. But this film has plenty of stupid things that degrade it, in addition to barely being a movie with its bare-bones script. This film, in parts, those parts likely having a script to them, tries to give its main characters, Sam Witwicky at least, some sort of a journey. He does go on a journey in this film, but I can't really say what it was, because it was inconsistent and pointless. But it is also those characters, or at least their actors' performances, that tie all of these things in this film together. Despite this, in parts, this film can be kind of good and enjoyable. Also, many people's general criticisms of this movie tend to be exaggerated. This movie does have some very dumb and stupid things in it, but it's not the entire movie. But it is a portion of the movie that is a lot larger than it should be. Overall, this film has a lot of over-the-top Michael Bay stuff, and a lack of a script, or at least a cohesive one, that is ultimately its downfall. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but it's definitely not the best thing, or the best Transformers movie. Considering everything, I give this film a 5 out of 10. Transformers Dark of the Moon is a movie that I think gets a little bit of a bad rap. It doesn't even get the compliments that it should for its great CGI that never really falters throughout the movie. Its phenomenal last hour-long battle that's able to keep your attention and be mostly comprehensible, making it well done. And yeah, just how great the action is in this movie. Though, a massive fault in this movie is how weightless or generic a lot of stuff feels. And both of these are partially due throughout the story and runtime of the film because of the absence of the character of Michaela or Megan Fox from the last two movies. It's not even the same character. They didn't even recast it. So a lot of plot decisions in this film seem out of nowhere, but they would hold more impact and make sense and make this movie better if it was that same character, preferably from the same actress in this movie. And that really takes me to really the biggest problem with this movie, and the only thing that holds it back, I think, for me and for most people is, its story. A lot of stuff feels contrived, disjointed, and out of nowhere, but when put in context with the series, it kind of makes a little bit more sense and is kind of a little bit better, but also at times with this MacGuffin plot and formula feels repetitive, but it does try to add some new things in there with some slight character development this time that isn't completely bare for the character of Sam, and a clashing of ideals between two factions of Transformers, which is actually interesting and provides conflict in this movie that drives the last hour of the film, which makes it the strongest part of the film. But the justifying for all of that is really the film's problem. Not that all the justification in this film, build-up, reasoning, and plot points in this film are bad, and not that this film is done badly. It just feels lazy and ingenuine. And this film does have some very unnecessary and awkward scenes, especially near the beginning, but the film portrays everything it needs to with its characters and plot. Plenty of stuff could be taken out, but this film, even on its own, isn't the worst thing and is perfectly watchable. And again, everything that came before, including the great plot twist of the film, good and bad, all the stuff that came before, really helped to set up the last hour of the film, which was great. And yeah, Murder Optimus isn't great in this movie or in the context of Optimus Prime. It's not like he goes on a character arc, but considering this continuity, it's perfectly fine. So yeah, I don't hate this film. I actually like it. I've watched it plenty of times throughout my life and have thoroughly enjoyed it and believe it is hated much more than it needs to be. And for all the reasons mentioned that were positive, I give this film an 8.5 out of 10. Transformers Age of Extinction is probably the most divisive film in the Transformers franchise. Personally, I think if it was retooled, many of the plot elements and ideas in the film, that is, this film would be pretty good. Actually, really good. This film starts off strong with a bunch of new ideas and a fresh start with few characters other than Optimus Prime and Bumblebee from the last three movies. And it introduces some interesting ideas following the aftermath of the third film, and it establishes a strong new threat in Lockdown. It also relatively smoothly establishes new characters and doesn't make you hate them. There's plenty of Bay excess throughout the film, and a little bit in this first hour, I'd say, but it's nothing too distracting. Some stuff that could and should be cut, but again, nothing too distracting. And the way that this film introduces Optimus Prime is very interesting and well done, especially the scene where Optimus Prime has to choose between saving himself and saving Cade Yeager and his family and friends, which is the most Optimus Prime thing in this entire franchise. He saves them, of course, by the way. This film also has stakes and at least slight, even though most of them are weak, motivations for each of its characters and reasons for each of them to behave and think like they do. This film, more than any other Transformers film, takes risks, and with many of them, it goes all out, but a lot of it just doesn't pay off. This is because it didn't do the most basic thing, which was making the characters strong, relatable, complex, giving us emotional connection to them and making them go on a strong, logical arc set up throughout the movie, which none of these films have. This film is still a fun ride. I've always enjoyed watching it. It does have some good action and some very good parts. This film is its own thing and is pretty rewatchable. It has a menacing and fun villain. It has cool ideas and plot lines, and it even has a strong theme of saving yourself or saving others, which is displayed most notably by Optimus Prime in this movie, but also by other characters. Also, it has Dinobots. It actually takes risks, and it has stakes. So, this film could be much worse. Overall, this film, though self-indulgent, still has some aspects to it that are to be appreciated. I give this film critically a 5.7 out of 10. Transformers: The Last Knight is a film that it doesn't make sense for me to like as much as I do, but I do like it. It has jumbled, nonsensical plot lines, and it shoehorns a bunch of ideas that do not connect at all, that aren't even that remarkable to see on screen. It has massive holes in continuity, logic, of course, and once again, retcons galore. The film shoehorns so much in and leaves us in places with our characters that are so inconsistent and could have actually have been done good if each of these many plot lines and things that were shoehorned in were spread out across movies or were just done patiently. This film has some major pacing issues and also has some nonsensical aspect ratio changes just because. Some shots kind of look cool, and it is kind of a cool aesthetic sometimes when you try to apply logic to it, but there really is no logic to it, and it's just unartistic. The film has a story that is pointless and repetitive, the worst characters in the entire series, little to no themes and character development, and is an unfulfilling end to Michael Bay's stint on the Transformers franchise. The film also has some pretty good action, a actually interesting selection of Decepticons alongside Megatron, who has a great new redesign, and his original voice back from the original cartoons, which provides Optimus and Megatron finally in live action with their original voice actors, with the most tangible rivalry in the series, some cool moments, and is honestly fun and entertaining when you just completely try to turn your brain off. I was also able to find some slight themes about family, allies, and like 2 other things in this film. Whatever. I enjoyed this film too much to give it any lower than a 5 out of 10, even with its faults. Bumblebee is a film that I am glad happened to this franchise. It is the first film in this franchise to be widely accepted as good, and the first one to actually pass on Rotten Tomatoes. And it actually has a very high score, having a 90% last time I checked. I don't think it is good enough to be a 9 out of 10 or a 90 out of 100, but I'm glad the franchise has this win for once. With that being said, once again, I do not like this film as much as many other people. It has a more basic and simple story, which is what the franchise needed, but again, was basic and simple. A boy and his dog story, or in this case, a girl and her car. To go with its simple and more backseated plot, this film, unlike the other Transformers films, is character-driven, not plot-driven, and dives into the character of Bumblebee and, of course, the human character in this movie. I would also like to note that the new designs in this film and the kind of soft reboot, retcon, continuity thing that this film did, and I liked the scene on Cybertron at the beginning of the film with all the G1 Transformer designs. It was nice. And overall, this film was a breath of fresh air to the Transformers franchise and kind of saved it and proved that there was still potential in it. I give this film a 7.8 out of 10. Well, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed, and that was something.